Podcast. I am Dennis Brown, your host, bringing you another great edition of the Jersey Cape Podcast. We want to remind you, if you like what you're listening to, make sure you subscribe. We're in a whole bunch of different places, depending upon where you like to get your podcasts, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. Also can get us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, so a bunch of different places. Make sure you find us in those places, subscribe, and it really does help us out as you continue to get our great content, and hopefully you enjoy hearing what we have here on the Jersey Cape Podcast. Today, it's all about beer. We're going to be talking about the breweries in Cape May County. So many great ones to choose from. And a little later in this episode, we'll be talking to Ryan Krill. He is with Cape May Brewery, and they were the original down here. Back in 2011, they got it all going. They're down at the Cape May Airport, and they have a fabulous selection of beer there, and we can't wait to talk with them about everything they have going on. Now, we'll be able to touch here a little bit on all of the breweries. I want to give you a little bit of information so you have an idea. When you come down, maybe you want to try a few different ones out at one time. Do a little tour, give you all the information that you need to know for everything. First up, 7 Mile Brewery. Now, they are located in Rio Grande. They just actually had their second anniversary party. They're at 3156 South Route 9 in Rio Grande, and they have a really cool little tasting room there. It's actually not little at all, though. It's a fairly nice size. I've tried beers there before. I really am a big IPA fan. They have some great selections there. And the other thing that I like about them is that they have some interesting beers. Even like my fiance, who's not a big beer drinker, they have some different types of things that, are usually available to try out. And she always seems to find something that she likes there. So I'd say that if you're looking at a place that really has some good selection and, really does have some quality beers, I certainly can recommend 7 Mile Brewery because I've been there before. Now, one of the newer ones, Bucket Brigade Brewery, also in Middle Township, but in Cape May Courthouse, 205 North Main Street. They just recently opened. They have a really cool look to their, they have a little bit of the fireman's theme, so they really play off that with what they have going on. And I've heard a lot of good things about there. They have some open air seating, which provides some great atmosphere if you really want to check out some awesome beers and have some atmosphere as well. Right near their downtown area, Bucket Brigade Brewery, if I can talk properly, one you definitely want to check out. Now, Cold Spring Brewery, they're located at a historic Cold Spring Village. And what's cool about their brewery, it's very much modeled after the time period for historic Cold Spring Village. So it's kind of like a back in time feeling. Plus, you get to try some interesting beers there. And again, that's at the historic Cold Spring Village, 733 Seashore Road. I think it's one you would want to check out. Ludlam Island Brewery. I was just there a couple of months ago. 9 Stony Court in Ocean View. They have some great beer selection there as well. They're open 12 to 8 daily, and they have a lot of different drinks. One of the ones that I'm a big fan of over there is their Let It Shine IPA. But they also have some other cool ones. They also, which is kind of cool, and this is what we like to see, where you use some local products. They actually have a coffee pale ale that's Harry's Coffee Pale Ale, and that's made with Harry and Beans Coffee, which their location is just next door to the brewery. So it's cool when the local breweries find ways to spice some of the local ingredients. Mud Hen Brewing Company, now they're not distributing, but they're beers that they make that you can have right there at the location. They're at 127 West Rio Grande Avenue in Wildwood. And boy, they have some great food there as well because it's a microbrewery, so you can eat there, do the whole nine. Fabulous food, great decor. It's run by the people that run Dogtooth restaurant in Wildwood, so if you're familiar with that, you like what they have there, you definitely would want to check out Mud Hen Brewing. And they just had a grand opening this year. Tons of people have gone. A A lot of people like it. And then Slack Tie Brewing Company, they're at 1072 Route 83 in Claremont, and they have a little bit of a smaller room there, but it's great beer. They pump out some really cool stuff. Here during the summer, they're 12 to 8, but you can check out their hours. That it will probably change as we get a little later in the season. But Slack Tide Brewing Company, I have some friends who are big beer drinkers. They're huge fans of what they have there. And with all these breweries, they have some of the flagships that you can always get. But they also do a lot of new releases where they'll roll it out into the tasting room. So, when you go, especially seasonally, as we get, into the Oktoberfest times and things like that, you can get a lot of different beers. So it's really some cool selection. We'll be diving a little bit more into Cape May Brewery with Ryan Krill in just a minute. But we wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of the brewery situation here in Cape May County. And hopefully you'll try out some of them on your next trip. Especially gives you a good reason to come back down in the off season and try out some of the great breweries we have here. We'll be right back here on the Jersey Cape Podcast. And Dennis Brown back here on the Jersey Cape Podcast, and we're at Cape May Brewery today, and we have a couple great people to talk to, Ryan Krill and also Alicia Grasso. Thank you to both of you for letting me stop by today and talk with you.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. I really appreciate it.
Now, first off, Ryan, Cape May Brewery, really, you guys got it all kicked off down here in the South Jersey area with the breweries. You've grown a lot. Obviously, you've invested locally into the brewery here, the experience for people, but you've also grown as well, where we're distributing in different parts of the state, out of the state, all that kind of stuff. You could talk a little bit about the growth of Cape May Brewery, the brand, and how it has kind of developed to be something that we're known for down here in Cape May County.
Sure. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity of being on this really great podcast, and I'm really flattered to see what Cape May Brewery has become. When we started in 2011, it was nothing more than me and my friend from college, Chris, and my father, Bob. And we were three homebrewers who were really passionate about craft beer and are still very passionate about indie craft beer. But it was like there was nothing here. There was nothing in Cape May County, nothing even in South Jersey. So we'd have to drive all the way up to Cherry Hill to get a growler filled. And naively, we thought oh, well, let's just start a brewery and see what happens. And what could possibly go wrong? And that was in 2011. So we just celebrated our 7th anniversary. And at that time, we rented a 1,500 square foot unit at the airport. And we chose the airport because that's really the only industrial space that was available. It was expandable. There wasn't any neighbors to piss off. And then we got cabanas to start carrying the beer. They were super excited about it. And at the time, I was living and working in Brooklyn, and my wife and I would drive down every Friday in my Volvo with 150,000 miles on it with no air conditioning. We drive all the way down on Friday after work, and then I would keg some of the beer that Chris was making all week, and then I would drive it to cabanas in a minivan. That was our delivery vehicle that was gifted to us, and that was it. And we started a brewery that way. Today, we're one of the biggest indie craft brewers in New Jersey. We employ over 80 people year round. We're a steady employer for us, so we're not really a seasonal business. We're located in a seasonal town, but we're not a seasonal business. So we've never had to lay anybody off or lack of work or anything like that. And we produce more beer in one day than in our entire first year combined, which is pretty remarkable.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, and we'll talk a little bit about the craft brewery, area and all that stuff for South Jersey. But, you talk about that growth. I mean, when you first started it, because I think it's interesting to hear the stories from sometimes the people that, help make things. What were your expectations, when you were thinking maybe 5 years down the road? I mean, where did you think this was going to go?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly what my expectations are. We had a 1-year lease intentionally. So we didn't really know how far it was going to work. And then if you if you come into the brewery now, that's the original unit where we started. That like the first door that you walk into, and there's a little vestibule right there. That is what we thought the tasting room would be, and that's it. So it's like it's like a 10 by 10 room, and the back is production. And so that was the initial thought. It's like, oh, that'd be perfect.
Now, the other interesting thing as well has been the kind of the growth, not just here locally, but nationwide. It really has taken off. What do you think, about craft beer really makes people excited? Because it's not just people, oh, yeah, let's go over to the brewery. Like people it's passionate. Like the way people collect toys or the way people, like trying different beers is like and having those check marks next to those things. That's a thing that people, aspire to get. If you could talk about that passion and the intensity that people really love these products that are made by you and many other great brewers across the country.
It's such an exciting time right now for beer. There's so many new innovative people and processes that have been introduced over the past several years that really have taken beer to a whole new level. I remember when we first opened, we used to dump batches of beer that were too hazy. And now if your beer is not, some of your IPAs aren't hazy, it's like not an IPA or something. So it's remarkable to see where things have come. But it's really exciting now that there are more breweries in the U.S. than there have ever been. When we opened, there were about 15 to 20 breweries, and now there's over 100 in New Jersey. So as a consumer, it's great. There's so much beer and so much variety out there and so much innovation. And with all this competition means that everybody is stepping up their game, and it's really exciting to see that.
Now, before you got here, I was actually talking with Alicia, and we were talking about, how you all will get messages from people who, they might be, an hour up the road somewhere, and they're like, "Hey, you're on tap here." They might be out of state, and that kind of stuff. That has to be a really cool experience. Like when people get excited to say, "Hey, I was in XYZ, and you're on tap, and like, when are you going to be at this next place?" And they're, because the people are along with the ride with you. It's not just, you just put out a product and you never see your customer. It's kind of a cool experience, I'd imagine, to get those, social media posts, the emails, and all that kind of stuff.
I find it to be really exciting and energizing to have people engage with us in a way that speaks to how I'm engaged with it. That like they're excited about this new release that we're doing, or they're excited about the beer that they got delivered to their bar and restaurant 120 miles away is as delicious as it is in our tasting room. That's awesome. That means like the machine is working.
No, absolutely. Now, in Cape May County as a whole, and the really cool thing about, and you mentioned we are a little bit seasonal, though I think, as things have continued to grow over the years, our, fall and winter months, the amount of activities, things that are open, things seem to continue to increase. But, the wineries, breweries, and distilleries as a whole have all given people more reasons to come back here in all of the months. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everybody sees a little bit of an uptick in the summer, but, it's just as good of a reason to be here in February as it is in June if you're interested in those types of things. If you could talk a little bit about, how we've had that explosion, in all of them, and specifically with craft beer, about how that, really does help this area. And, I mean, I'm sure you see the parties that come in here and people that, the buses and all that stuff, people making it a point that, they want to stop at your brewery and a number of others in the area.
Yeah, so consumer trends have certainly changed even in our short time that we've been around, that people are looking for an experience, right? That's like synonymous with millennials right now, as they want the experience, they want that Instagrammable moment, and our tasting room serves that purpose. And we know what we are and we know what we are not. So we're a tasting room and we're open every day year round, but we're not a bar. So there's things that you'll experience there that you won't experience elsewhere. So we don't play the game on TV. We don't really do live music. We're there when folks come in, when our guests come in, they're there to be educated about the beer and have a truly unique experience that you really can't get anywhere else. And that's really what we provide. And the goal is for folks to come, try a bunch of really unique experimental beers that, we haven't released anywhere else quite yet. And then go to one of our really great customers to grab lunch and hopefully buy a beer, or go to one of our liquor stores to carry our beer and grab a 6-pack. And that way it's a win-win for the whole community, and it's a partnership.
Now, and I've talked with some of the other breweries in the area in the past for various things, and the one thing I've noticed is that everybody gets along pretty well, even though they're kind of in competition. They all like do try to generally, I think, go try different people's beers, and it seems like you all have a pretty decent community. If you could talk a little bit about that, where it's there is competition, but I think it's healthy and friendly.
Yeah, so it absolutely is. There's the Brewers Guild in New Jersey, which is the state association that represents craft beer, and that ties a lot of folks together. And then in Cape May County, we have a number of different brewers who are putting out some really great stuff, and really happy to be a part of that. So when we hear of anyone new that's opening up, we embrace them. We're not one to pull the ladder up behind us. And then all we want them to do is make really great beer. Because if they do, then that elevates the whole community, the whole craft community. And if they're not, then it's really not helping us. So it's really a win together. And really, our competition is the craft versus crafty. So craft is like what we do. Like, we make our beer here, and we're the ones selling it, and that's it. Versus brands that come in from these international conglomerates that present themselves as craft beer and try to fool the consumer into thinking they're craft, but it's not.
Now, for somebody who maybe hasn't been to Cape May Brewery, or maybe they don't really go much to breweries, but they're listening to this and they might say, "Hey, I'd really love to give you a shot." What is the experience you want them to have when they come to Cape May Brewery? If you could kind of walk them through as they come there to, obviously there's the tours and all, but explain that process to them, and to get them excited about wanting to stop by.
One of the unique things about New Jersey tasting rooms at microbreweries is that you're required to get a tour. So what a lot of places will do is they'll just give you like a rack card or say, "Hey, look over there, that's a tour." We really embrace it. We invested a lot of time, money, and energy into creating this really great experience. So it's a whole self-guided tour, interactive piece that ignites all the senses. There's opportunities to get inside a fermenter, get your photo taken, and try to make it really fun and really set the tone. And then that also satisfies our legal requirement. Then you have a couple different ways to go into our main area, which we provide flights, and that's really what we try to sell folks, is get them to have a flight to try several of the different beers. We do extensive training for all of our beer tenders, so that they know exactly what they're talking about. They know how to talk people through beer, because sometimes it can be really intimidating. Like, oh, well, like if you're not a craft beer consumer, or if you're just a wine drinker trying to get into craft beer, it can be really intimidating. So we try to break down as many barriers as we can to make it really approachable for folks.
Yeah, I do know some people, along those lines. I feel like sometimes people can feel a little intimidated going to some of these places if they don't feel as though they have the knowledge. They don't want to ask a dumb question to the person who's serving them. And not just necessarily just at a craft brewery, but if, you go to one of those, the bars that has, 60 things on tap or whatever, sometimes you do feel a little intimidated because you don't want to ask a dumb question. Some people don't necessarily know the difference between an IPA, stouts, and all. They just know, hey, I tried that and I liked it. Some people, that's all they know. So, I've always felt like at Cape May Brewery and, some of the other breweries when I've gone to other states, I think in general, people would be surprised how friendly and welcoming it can be.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a pretty simple guy, and like one of my favorite things to say is like less words, more pictures. So if there's a way to communicate that with selling people beer and selling experience, make it as simple as possible, that's the goal.
So we have about a minute or so left. Before we wrap it up here, is you kind of talk, and neither one of you can take it, it's fine. But as you all do this work, and obviously, you're focused on your business, but, as a whole, we mentioned, you are one of the, it's a driving force now. I mean, people come for brewery tours, they come for winery tours, all that stuff. How have you embraced that part of it, of, trying to market and trying to be, active with that kind of stuff to, try to, bring people down for that and make it a part of, their vacation experience?
We live 20 miles out in the ocean, and we recognize that we're kind of at the end of the earth. We're at the same latitude as Washington, D.C. So to be able to keep people coming to Cape May County and spend, add something to the itinerary for a weekend visit or a week-long visit is a win for everybody. So while we're a business in a seasonal town, we're not a seasonal business, and our reach is national, and at some points it's international with some of the beers that we've done in the past. Like when the Pope came to Philly, we did a beer in his honor, right, Yopo, and that got international press, which is amazing. And if you follow our Instagram or social or Facebook, we get tags from all over the place. So our audience that really speaks to Cape May is not just South Jersey. It's really national, and we really try to speak to them in a fun and engaging and mindful way.
And final thing we'll wrap up with, because I think that people really, they always love to talk about, when you have special releases, obviously you do your can debuts and all that stuff. There is also the seasonal beers. If you could talk a little bit about, especially those limited release stuff. I mean, you have the stuff that, everybody knows you for, but if you could talk a little bit about, how you decide on some of those. I mean, some seasonal stuff's easy and some of it's a little bit more, intricate. If you could talk about how you kind of come up with those ideas and, how does that process work as you all sit around and say, hey, we need to come up with something for March or whatever.
Yeah. So as the bigger we get, the further we have to plan in advance. And, it's really remarkable that we have this fun innovation process. And that's really like the fun part of beer for me is like the creative piece, the marketing, the flavor profiles, like all of it is just so interesting. And you can get easily caught up in like distribution and finance and accounting and HR and all that stuff. So, but we always kind of circle back and circle around the innovation process. So today we did a release of a beer called Crushing It, which is a brute IPA with orange in there, and it tastes like an orange crush, and it is amazing. Simultaneously, we released another beer that we've been working on for over a year called Temporarily Permanent, which is a mixed fermentation beer, a sour beer, and it's been sitting in these barrels for like over a year. And it just happened that the beer was finally ready, and we released it. And that part of the innovation process is like our testing grounds. And when we have people come in, our guests come in and say, "Hey, I really like this beer," they give us direct feedback, and that is really important for us to be able to engage in that way. But it's also the fun part, because like releasing beer like logistically is pretty challenging. We have a sales team, we have a distribution team, we effectively have our own distribution company that sells in all of our beer through New Jersey. So we're kind of like three businesses rolled up into one. We're a tasting room, we're a production facility, and then we're a distribution company. So to be able to coordinate all that into like a sales forecast for a beer that we've never tried before is like a big gamble. So we like to start small and take little bite-sized chunks off. And it really starts with these like fun kind of wacky ideas. And I make it very democratic here at the brewery that I solicit feedback from everybody. I call it the opportunity for everybody to poke the baby here and like provide feedback, both good and bad, and make suggestions, good and bad. So that way we can really become a much better brewery and a much better company.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ryan, for a little time today. Really interesting to talk about this. And, I obviously wish you nothing but the best. It's great success that you've had so far, and it's great for the area.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So we'll be right back to finish up the episode here on the Jersey Cape Podcast. I want to thank you again for listening to the Jersey Cape Podcast. I want to again remind you, if you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. We'd love to have you help support what we're doing here with the Jersey Cape Podcast. Obviously, every episode's a little different. Sometimes we're looking at specific towns. Sometimes we're looking at things you can do. This one, obviously, a very beer focused, but we'll have some great episodes ahead, focusing on Fabulous 50s weekend in the Wildwoods, looking at some golfing, things like that. So tons of different things to do. We want to thank everybody for listening. And again, this has been the Jersey Cape Podcast.